All right, guys. So I watched The Penguin episode 7. This is the penultimate episode. Next week is the season finale, potentially the series finale. We're not actually sure if we're getting a Penguin season 2. I think this is technically a limited series, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's really successful. So they're probably going to make a second one. But it's also like, would it come out before the Batman Part 2 or after? Because I think this is supposed to, like, the way it's written and the way they're doing the Batman Part 2 is that this is supposed to lead, like, really smoothly into the Batman Part 2. So I don't know. Who knows? It's not even a conversation we should be having right now. We should just be talking about the actual episode itself. So we get to see a young Oz and a young Francis. They have the really heavy, is it like a Brooklyn accent? Like they don't pronounce three. They say tree. they don't pronounce the whenever they talk. But this was like super cute, kind of, in a way. At first, at least it was at first, seeing like a young Oz and a young Francis, and it was actually kind of sweet seeing that Francis was actually like a pretty good mom, seemingly. Like you kind of see their interactions at the beginning of the series, and you see Francis being like, you have your mom cooped up in this pretty big house, and you bought your mom a house, but that's not good enough, Oz. You said that you were gonna give me a really good life, and you've given me like an amazing life, but I deserve more. I guess I deserve to be like a millionaire, something. Like, she seemed like kind of an abusive mom. Like what the fuck are you talking about? Your kid bought you a house. Like, he's done like the best that a son could possibly do, right? Um, but it was interesting coming back and seeing her. It's like, so you would think that she would have been like some kind of like abusive mother, or that she would be like, or yeah, like abusive, or at the very least just like mean and like miserable. But she really wasn't that. Like, she seemed to treat her kids well. And then we obviously learned that we learned exactly why she ended up just like becoming mind broken. Um, but yeah, so then we also see Oz's brothers, and it's kind of interesting because actually, so I was saying that that Frances seemed like actually an all right mother, but it also seemed like she was getting Oz's brother to do like deals with mobsters for her or something, where she would where like his brother gave that like binder to a mobster, and then the mobster gave him money. I'm actually not entirely sure what that's all about. But like, clearly she wasn't that good of a mother if she was involving her her child in her like drug deals or whatever. Um, but yeah, anyways, so then the brothers, they go out and they play hide and seek, and Oz just murders them. That was like, it's pretty crazy. And again, I'm just gonna continue commending the show for having the balls to actually make a show about a villain. Oz is a bad person. Ever since a kid, he has been a morally bankrupt person, and I really just appreciate that this show isn't trying to like do this weird thing of making be like, oh no, see, the Penguin, he's not that bad of a guy at all. After all, he's actually a hero. It's like, no, Oz is just a bad person. He is a villain, and we are watching a show about a villain. So, superhero media often doesn't do that. So I just appreciate that they're actually sticking through with this. And yeah, it's pretty insane. They just murdered his siblings because he was like jealous of them, it seemed like. And like he wanted his mom's attention all for himself, which does kind of play into that like need for validation that he has in like a lot of aspects of it in his life. So yeah, really well done with all of that. And then yeah, we flash forward to present day, and Salvatore Maroni kidnapping Oz, going all Abby from The Last of Us on him. And yeah, I thought another really cool scene was Sophia and Francis. Because obviously Sophia kidnapped Francis in the last episode, and they're having a little bit of a verbal sparring match where like Sophia is trying to get information out of Francis, like trying to learn about Oz and his past and whatnot. And Francis is kind of like trying her best to not be intimidated and being like, "Oh, you think you're hot stuff just because you call yourself a gigante, but you're the same as your dad. It's all the same. It's just drugs or whatever." And then that kind of, then leads into Sophia being like, "You know what? I don't want to keep playing the same games." But we'll get to that in just a second. Going back to to Penguin and Salvatore, so they get to his fucking to the Bliss farm, and there's it ensues in like a gang war, and Oz's guys start fighting with the Maroni guys, and then you got Salvatore fighting Penguin mano a mano, and he just has a fucking heart attack because he's old, I guess. And I really liked what they did with Penguin's reaction, where he was almost like upset that it's almost like he felt like it was too easy taking down Salvatore, because Penguin is just like so obsessed with, again, like it goes back to ever since he was a kid, he's like so obsessed with validation, and like he wanted to take out Salvatore, I think, in like a more grand fashion, but no, like Salvatore just he just had a heart attack, and Oz was like mad about that, which I thought was really funny. By the way, Clancy Brown, he's a big guy. I it's like I kind of forget sometimes, but he's like he's like towering over Colin Farrell. It's like, damn. Mr. Krabs. He's built different, isn't he? Then we get to this really insane scene where Sophia's trying to gaslight her like niece or whatever, that she decided to save when she murdered her family. And it's just like really weird scene where she's like, "Listen, just to be clear, I didn't kill your parents, but also they kind of deserved it. So even if I did, you shouldn't be mad at me because your parents kind of cringe." But yeah, and again, like kind of going back to that conversation with Francis, I think that this interaction where I think she probably realized, because it was very similar to what her dad did to her, right? Where her dad murdered her mom, and then he lied to her about it. She's literally just repeating that cycle of abuse with this girl. So I think it was this experience that kind of like made Sophia realize that she was just becoming her dad, and that I guess she wants to break the cycle, because Sophia ends up like just blowing up the Bliss farm. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but has she effectively like taken Bliss out of the market? Like, I'm pretty sure that's kind of what's going on here, where she's like, you know what? I don't care to play these gangster games. I just want to take down Oz. I just want to make Oz suffer. So, screw it. I don't care about the Bliss anymore. But Penguin, you're not going to have it either. Which I thought was a pretty baller move. And it kind of like makes Sophia. This feels like the evolution of Sophia transitioning from just being like a gangster or a mobster to like almost being like a super villain, like a Batman-y super villain, where she's like, I low key don't care as much about the whole gangster stuff anymore, and I just want revenge, which I thought was kind of fun. Because that's been the question about this, right? Of like, is Sophia going to survive past this show? Like, is she gonna end up being a villain that we see in the Batman Part 2 or whatever? And I'm kind of wondering if we might actually if we might see her continue forth as like a new kind of villain that rises up in Gotham. Because like this whole episode is kind of about her, or at least obviously the parts that she's in this episode, like I said before, is about her like not wanting to be like a traditional gangster the way that her father was. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of them hinting at her becoming a more larger than life villain. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe Oz like puts a bullet in her skull next episode. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, then like they do another flashback where her mom, and so yeah, so it's because Oz kills her brother or his brothers that seemingly like breaks Francis's brain in a sense, and she's like dancing with her son, and she's like, "You gotta give me a good life, Oz. I deserve a happy life. That's the only way that I can move forward." And like putting this like weird undue pressure on her child. But yeah, it's because of what he did. He broke his mom's brain, which is not great. Not a good thing for a son to do. I'll tell you that. And yeah, so it seems like there's like a gigante goon that captures Oz because we see him climbing out of the rubble. And it seems like next week we're gonna pick up with Oz probably kidnapped by Sophia. I would assume that at some point in that episode, Vic is gonna come through with goons from the other gangs, and there's probably gonna be like an all-out gang war, and it'll be interesting because so as where we stand right now, Oz's gang is pretty much dead, right? Like, because again, Sophia blew up that Bliss farm, and then we're probably gonna see Sophia and maybe the Asian gang. I think that's one of the few that was like the major gang that's left over. If Vic comes to the Gigantes with that gang, presumably the Asian gang and the Gigantes end up doing like a gang war. Maybe Oz then rises out of the rubble because they get weakened enough. That's kind of where I'm thinking maybe next week's episode is going to go. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next video. Goodbye.